We finally got some team leaders revealed for the Tom Brevoort relaunch, and we have a discussion to be had here. And obviously, we do have the X-Men aficionado himself, Doc, to hit it up. What's up, Doc?
It's another announcement of the X-Men that doesn't really move the needle with anybody. And it's another announcement for X-Men that just seems like they're changing in name only, but nothing's really different here.
Well, let's expand upon that, because fans anticipating the new era of X-Men under Tom Brevoort got a taste of what's to come via Women of Marvel this week. In the introduction by Angelique Roche, upcoming projects featuring women characters were listed, including the leaders of 2 X-Men teams. Those leaders are none other than Rogue and Kate Pryde. I will take note with the name Kate instead of Kitty Pryde. Those are 2 people that have been leaders of the X-Men in the past. A Rogue, certainly much more of a sus leader in the past than Kitty Pryde when she's been the leader, not only in the past, but also in the future of X-Men. So these are some names that we've seen before, although Rogue hasn't featured heavily or any type of leadership role within X-Men, certainly during the Krakoa era.
She's mostly been kind of relegated to a side character throughout the Krakoan era, even though her moms, I guess, have been pretty central to the Krakoan era with Mystique and Destiny. But Rogue, however, has been relegated to the sideline, not quite so much as her husband, who's been left at home to take care of the cats. The only thing I've really remembered Rogue doing here was that one issue of X-Men where they went to that gambling space station to beat Cordyceps Jones in one issue after they built him up in that first issue to be one of the big bads.
Basically, the biggest thing about Rogue during the Krakoan era is Destiny and Mystique. And I think I've kind of had enough of Destiny and Mystique at this point. You know, I like Mystique as a character. Destiny probably shouldn't have been, resurrected or whatever. She's made the series less interesting. It's kind of hard to have clairvoyance when you're supposed to have danger in the future. I hate them using the name Kate Pryde. It's kind of just stained at this point. Her being the drunk pirate captain or whatever she was. And then I know you got put in your place by Rich Johnston over that, right?
Yeah, well, Rich tried to do that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, as I said there, and I will say again, and Rich can take as much umbrage as he'd like with it, using the name Kate Pryde is a giant red flag that nothing is better, nothing is fixed, and no direction is being changed. Now, Rich had to chime in with his 2 cents about, oh, I bet you didn't like Days of Future Past then. Bitch, this chick that's been masquerading as Kitty Pryde and calling herself Kate for the last couple of years bears absolutely zero resemblance to any of the versions of Kitty that we saw for the past 40 years. Definitely doesn't appear like she's maturing into the Kate Pryde we saw during Days of Future Past for 2 fucking issues. Every single time he opens his mouth, he just plays stupid bullshit semantic games. Fuck you, Rich.
The Rogue-led team includes Nightcrawler, Gambit, and Wolverine, and suggests a flashback to earlier classic costumes, possibly in keeping with an X-Men 97 vibe. While Kate Pryde will have Emma Frost on her team, as well as a number of shadowy figures, and it looks like Storm, recently Queen of Araco and Regent of Seoul, will be entering the political arena. Now, before we get to the makeup of the teams, I know there was some outrage or controversy about the look of Storm in that particular panel because she had like a mohawk and a pantsuit on or whatever, but I don't know. Storm beat the shit out of Cyclops and took leadership of the X-Men sporting a mohawk, and it's one of her better looks of all time. And I've certainly seen Storm in a pantsuit. I mean, it's pretty classic-looking Storm to me.
I mean, I saw a little bit of the discourse around this, and I thought it was just plain dumb. Like, Storm has had a mohawk. Well, she got it during Paul Smith's run. She had it then. She had it for a couple of years. She beat Cyclops' ass while with a mohawk. She became the leader of the Morlocks with a mohawk, and she was a badass during that whole fucking era. And pantsuits are a literal women's style. That doesn't mean you're suddenly confusing her, that she's suddenly questioning her gender identity. This is perfectly within character for Storm to have a straight white mohawk wearing a pantsuit. Look, I get it. We're used to Marvel going with the most cliched and tired culture war gender identity bullshit in the last few years, but we can't start seeing it where it's not.
Now, as far as the teams go, certainly it appears that Rogue is going to be on whatever the main team is. It's clear there's going to be 2 books, but she's got Wolverine, she's got Gambit, Nightcrawler. She's got a lot of the classic X-Men team that people really like. So that's clearly going to be the main title. A little bit strange to me to have Rogue lead that team because she really hasn't been at the forefront, but it's a good makeup.
Having Wolverine and Rogue on the same team and Rogue leading it is within reason, but I don't think that it's a big team at that point.
Whatever has Wolverine is going to be the big team. As far as the other one, we've got Kate Pryde with Emma Frost and some people in the background. Doesn't seem all that interesting. We're going to have to learn more teammates. Obviously, we're not seeing Cyclops and Jean Grey. My assumption is that they're still going to be dead after Fall of X or whatever you want to call it.
Ever since Joss Whedon decided to put Emma and Kitty on the same team going back in Astonishing X-Men, they've been doing this thing, and especially during the whole Krakoan era, where Kitty is kind of like Emma's little apprentice, a / rival, and Emma's all proud of her all the time. And this Kitty Emma pairing has gotten really fucking tiresome. That being said, I think you are really missing something with not having Jean and Scott here, especially when the Summers Gray family has been so central, and now they're gonna just write them completely off. Outside of that, that's really the only difference I'm seeing here between the Krakoan era and this era. Well, minus the island shit too.
You know what kind of sucks is the coolest thing about Matt Rosenberg's Uncanny X-Men is that they brought Scott back and he wasn't a villain anymore. He was trying to get the X-Men together, and they were going out and saving people, and it felt like, oh my goodness, they're finally taking Scott seriously again. He gets to be a hero again. And it only lasts like 7 issues, something like that, before they just kill it off in the Krakoan era, and it looks like they're going to sideline him again.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, you had the whole Fraction and Brubaker era essentially turning Cyclops into a fucking villain. You had the Bendis era where you turned him basically into mutant Hitler. And then Matthew Rosenberg actually started redeeming the character just for him to get sidelined. And then they couldn't figure out what the fuck to do with him during the Krakoan era. He was the captain commander, but then he couldn't be that anymore because he was now running the X-Men. And then when he was part of the X-Men, he didn't really actually do anything. We've been waiting almost 15 years for Cyclops to revert back to Cyclops. We've only gotten it for maybe like 6 issues total in 15 years now. It seems annoying, if not outright hostile to the old X fans. Instead, it's courting the new X fans that hate Cyclops and think he's a fucking loser.
So as far as the teams go, are you hostile to these teams, or do you think there's a little bit of potential there? Is this piquing your interest, or is this telling you it's more of the same?
The Rogue and Wolverine and Nightcrawler book has my interest, or at least it's piquing my interest. The Emma and Kitty book, absolutely not. All it is a continuation of Joss Whedon's bullshit. All that garbage that Jerry Duggan was doing in the Marauders, Red Queen and White Queen on the Quiet Council and all that bullshit. No, no. Fuck that. This is continuation of shit nobody liked and nobody fucking bought.
Finally, this confirms we'll get 2 mainline X-Men books, and this will be a female-focused push with team leaders. The question then arises, which titles will those be? Uncanny X-Men, X-Men, or something with a new adjective? Only time will tell, but we'll likely be getting more information in the coming weeks with Free Comic Book Day Special, most likely revealing all the details given the Free Comic Book Day Special creative team. One might assume Gail Simone and David Marquez are kicking off one of those X-Men titles.
I doubt that they'll probably come up with a new adjective. They've already done Astonishing X-Men. They've done Amazing X-Men. They've done Extraordinary X-Men in the not too recent past. I don't think they'll do the Colors era. It's got too much of a bad taste. But they're going to treat it like the X-Men Blue, X-Men Gold teams from back in the early 90s that inspired the cartoon. When Jim Lee, Chris Claremont, X-Men launched to 7 million copies and you split the team up and made 2 different teams. That's likely what we're going to see. Both of them are going to be led by women, and that's fine. I mean, that's happened before. I really don't care about that. I think that this time around, they're going to put the big team, like the A-list team, on the Uncanny book and the B team on the adjectiveless book.
Here's the big question. You are an X-Men completionist, or at least you were. You were even buying into X-Men red, gold, and blue, and you didn't like the colors era, but you stuck your way through it. You got into the Krakoan era. You decided to let it go. What's it going to take for Gail Simone and likely Christopher Can't Write Well to pique your interest and let you know that things have changed and lifelong X-Men fans are once again welcome back into the franchise?
Well, they'd have to drop the Kate Pryde thing. They'd have to go back to Kitty or even Catherine. Really distance themselves from this portion, this era of X-Men, because Kate Pryde is definitely associated exclusively with drunken knuckle tattoos, kissing the tattoo artist, complete bitch. They'd also have to deviate from the weird frenemies thing between her and Emma. I think you'd need a more intriguing rest of the cast for that book. And it honestly can't be any character created in the last 20 years. And the Rogue, Wolverine, Nightcrawler book, I feel like that one has to be them going out to try to kill Mystique and Destiny. Because all three of those characters, at least thus far, have a connection to the Mystique Destiny couple to some degree. Basically on a team hunting them down because they're trying to make some mutant utopia, mutant future thing, and them starting a new brotherhood and the X-Men trying to take them out. That would be probably something that might get my interest enough to come back, but both of the writers would actually have to learn how to write.
You bring up something very important to me. They really need to reestablish the X-Men villains as villains. We have to have Magneto as a villain. We need to take all these guys that they tried to turn into anti-heroes or just misunderstood and put them right back as villains and get things back. Basically reestablish the X-Men universe as it's supposed to be before they can move forward. Because if you don't get everything back to the basics and put it back in a working order, you really can't move forward, in my opinion.
No, you really, really cannot. You cannot continue in a X-Men, I guess, dynamic where there's basically no villains. Everybody's just kind of some degree of morally gray. Is there any other nonsense like that where there's no major difference between the X-Men and the villains? So you absolutely 100% need to reestablish them. And I don't think that is a big ask at this point. Although at the same time, I'm not convinced anyone in that office or even anyone in that publisher currently understands what the fuck a villain is. Well, unless they hit a certain non-diversity checkboxes, and kind of look like me and you.
Well, we are the biggest villains in comic books. Now, if you would like more discussions with Doc and myself, this is actually like a 26-minute discussion about this new era of X-Men. On YouTube, it's probably about 12 to 14 minutes. If you would like the full conversation, you got to go over to the Patreon for the Doc Unfiltered podcast. We'll also have 2 hours every single week. Doc and I answering all your questions in the Doc and Wes Q&A. Doc is mostly, I don't know, Doc has a point. They say Doc is right. I don't believe that stuff. If you're looking for more Doc and Wes, there's a link in the video description to the Patreon.